I'm Jude Kelly. I'm the Artistic Director of Ripples of Hope, and thank you. Have you all been here all morning? Nodding away. Some of you have just joined. We had such stalwarts at, from 10 o'clock in the morning discuss climate emergency and stay for the whole day. And those of you who've been here for 3 days, absolutely amazing. We've also got people live streaming in for 3 days. Some of them, never moved from their city, apparently. We're going to... It's actually one of the interesting things about COVID is it's sort of forced us to use technology. And then it made us realise, didn't it, that we always could have used technology a lot more to be in touch with people. And so we're really lucky because the conversation we're about to have, we couldn't have had it without this hybrid way that we've started to work. And I feel kind of slightly liberated and also calmed by the idea that we haven't got to fly people in all over the place. We can actually just talk to them, and there they are. So we're excited about that. So you know that we're going to talk to Kailash Satyarthi, but we're also joined today, and very pleased to see you too, by Kinsar Kumar, who is one of the laureates and leaders for the Children's Summit in 2016. And he was himself a child labourer, and he's going to talk about his experiences as well. So, hi. So let's see if... Kailash, are you there? I can see that you're there. Kinsu, hello? Can you hear me?
Hi, Jude.
Hi. Very, very, very good to see you. Everybody's really pleased that you're here. People who are in the auditorium.
Good to see you too.
And I just wanted to start by congratulating you, and also congratulating us. You may not know this, audience, but Kailash has just been appointed by the UN as the SDG for the Sustainable Development Goals for advancing the agenda around the elimination of child labour. And that's a really key appointment. I mean, you already are, a world eminent leader in this field. But I wanted to start by asking you whether this appointment, most of us know what the Sustainable Development Goals are, or we sort of have vaguely heard of them. But I think there is a general feeling that the SDGs are known to, the people who are very involved in these areas, but they're not something that, broadly speaking, are owned by the world yet. And yet we have this sort of time ticking away on when they have to be realised. So what does it mean to you to be appointed as this UN advocate for SDGs? What does it mean practically for your work?
Well, we are very concerned that whether we can achieve these children's related sustainable development goals in the prescribed time frame, particularly the goal which is supposedly aiming at eradication of all forms of child labor by 2025, as well as the forced labor, slavery, trafficking, etc. So that has to be eradicated by 2025, and we are afraid if very urgent, robust actions are not taken, then it would be very difficult. So for me, I would try my best to push this agenda in the United Nations as well as with the governments and intergovernmental agencies and so on. We cannot ignore our children, and I strongly believe that if we are not able to accomplish the children's related goals, we cannot accomplish the rest of the goals of sustainable development. We cannot create this society which we are aiming at.
Okay, so just to be clear, and I'll give the facts that I know, but please correct me. There are 160 million children who are child labourers, as an estimate. And there are more child labourers now than there were 10 years ago. And although COVID has exacerbated the issues of child labour, and we'll talk about why that would be, before COVID, the numbers of child labourers were also rising, weren't they? I think that has become a rising problem before COVID hit, and obviously COVID will make it worse. I think people are always shocked when they hear that number. But why? Can you tell us why you think the numbers have been rising, and whether the world talks about it enough, or is it one of the things that's hard to get to the top of people's agendas?
Well, talking enough is different than doing enough. There has been some talk during all those years, but when it comes to the realization of those talks into practice, then it is really challenging. I would like to say that between 2000 and 2016, those 16 years were important in the steady and significant decrease in child labor from 250 million to 150 or say 152 million.
So you took away a million children went out of child labor.
So about 100 million lesser number of children were working since then, since 2000. But between 2016 and 20, and I underline here that these are the first 4 years of SDGs and pre-pandemic time, we have seen this increase. So we are not talking about the pandemic effect on child labor, but we are talking about our failure before pandemic. Mm-hmm. And that is much more, I would say, shameful in harsh language, that when we have made so much progress in many other fields, during those 4 years, world had become $10 trillion more richer when these 8 million children were added to child labor workforce and exploitation. And this means we have not invested enough. We have not been able to ensure education for our children properly. We did not invest on education, healthcare, protection. Children have not been our priority when it comes to budgetary allocation and overseas development aids, when it comes to policies and enforcement of those policies. So something is wrong, and that shows there was decrease in the political will. We didn't have enough political will, and that is much more serious. If we are ignoring our children, we are ignoring our present, we are ignoring our future also. And when we talk of such children, such large number of children, even if one single child is forced into slavery, then we cannot call ourselves civilized and cultured. So I am being blunt about it, but this is the fact that we have failed our children again and again. We keep on making false promises, and that's why I have full faith in the young people, the youth, like Kim, who is sitting here. And there are so many young people might be listening to me today. I tell you that the most compelling and honest voices come from young people and children themselves, survivor themselves. So we have to double our efforts. We have to triple our effort. And we cannot simply leave it to the politicians and lawmakers and the United Nations agencies only.
Yesterday we were talking about, well, Friday we were talking about modern slavery, and the facts that we now know, which is there are more slaves in the world now than there were in the Greek and Roman times, when we're used to knowing that there was slaves as part of those economies. And the figures that you're giving for child laborers, for child slavery, and these are mainly like 4-year-olds up to 11-year-olds, aren't they? They are really children. To say that that has increased at the same time as the world has increased its wealth by trillions, is there a direct relationship between child labor and the economies of countries moving up? I mean, why is it, who's got the vested interest in maintaining this?
There is a vicious circle between child labor and adult unemployment, or you can say child labor and adult poverty and illiteracy. Every single child laborer is working at the cost of one adult's job, and that adult could be the very parent, mother or father or adult family member of that child. So if a child is occupying that job, that means somebody in the family of those poor people in poor households is remaining jobless. So that makes the vicious circle. And since children are the cheapest source of labor, children do not challenge, they do not form the unions and go to the court of law. They cannot go on hunger strike or strike. So they don't have any kind of collective bargaining or unionization or anything. And that makes their situation more vulnerable. So they are preferred to the adult people, and that goes on. So a large number of children are working in supply chain of many, many international companies. Those who are listening to me, they might be eating those chocolates which are produced by child laborers, and the chocolate companies are minting money out of the sweat and blood of children. That is unacceptable. Many of us must be using those clothes and shoes and apparels and many other things which are produced by child labor workforce at the cost of their childhood and freedom. So those who are making money, they are well connected with the enforcement agencies and sometimes with the lawmakers. And that corruption and the black money generation by engaging child labor is also a big fuel for this situation.
You can see that because around the world, other minority rights groups can talk to each other and mobilize, whether that's disability, whether that's around a race, whether it's around sexuality, whether it's around gender. You have the ability to mobilize like-minded people as a global force. But if you're a 6-year-old, you can't mobilize to the countries that don't think of themselves as having this problem, as it were. I mean, it is all our problem because we share a global economy and we exploit the wealth of that economy. But you can see straight away that these children are, in a sense, isolated from any ability to mobilize. Is there anything around that idea of child mobilization of activism that has begun to sprung up?
Well, the mobilization of young people in the fight against child labor is very critical because, as I said before, that the voices of young people on behalf of their sisters and brothers is critical. So that is the reason we have launched a campaign called 100 Million for 100 Million campaign. In short, we call 100 Million campaign. The whole idea is that 100 million youth who are better off than others and who are in schools, colleges, universities, and jobs, they can be the champions for the cause of left out sisters and brothers of them. So that is very helpful. Secondly, the survivor's voice also matters a lot. So we wanted to mobilize that largely untapped power of young people in the fight against child labor. So this is the situation. And Kinshu, who is sitting here, Kinshu is a survivor, as you know, whom we freed. You can ask this question to him and he can definitely answer well. He's also a big fighter in on capacity.
So Kinshu, can we come to you? Thank you for joining us. I know that you're, at least I think I know that you're 22 now. I'm just waiting for you to come on screen. But you know, you started life as a very young child labourer, working in your family and working for your dad, not really being committed to the idea of your education, and then you had a moment of breakthrough and hope, which gave you education. Are you there? Kinshu, are you there that we can talk to you?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So, I mean, you've got a wonderful range of books behind you. I can actually see Albert Einstein behind you. So, you know, I know that as a scholar, you have really enjoyed life, a life of learning. But can you just tell us a little bit about how you began life as a child?
So first I would like to say namaste to all the people who are hearing me, and thank you for inviting me to to speak here. I was only 6 years old when I started working with my father. My father is a driver, so I used to be with him and go around and help him in his work, and also used to clean car. And that time I was only 6 year old. And later on, I worked for around a couple of years, and then I was withdrawn from work by Bachchan Bachao Andolan, the Save the Childhood movement, and which is founded by Bhai Sabji. We all the children we call him Kailash with the Bhai Sabji, which is means elder brother with affection. And
Elder brother, yeah.
Yes, elder brother. And I was brought to Balashram where I'm sitting today, and this is the books you see. It's the library in Balashram where I'm sitting. So this is the place for the children, which was founded by Bhai Sabji and his wife Sumedaji in 1998 for the children who were rescued from the work. And because those children who were rescued, when they can come and stay in this place and live their childhood, learn about the freedom, learn about their rights, and get a chance to get education and learn and dream what they want to be. So I was one of them, one of the thousands of children who were rescued by him. And I was fortunate that I was withdrawn from work and brought at this place. And then I never been to school before coming to this place. And after I came here, I started learning and I was enrolled in the school. And then that's how my journey began. And after completing my education, I work, and then I decided to come back to this place. And now I'm working here with the children and helping them what I have achieved through this Bal Ashram. And apart that, I had also opportunity to speak for all the children in the world globally, in India, United States, European Union, and where I had opportunity to speak about the children, their rights, and how people all around the world can and build a world where every child can live with a dignity and don't have to be slave, and he can get education and nobody can snatch their freedom from them.
So the phrase rescued, which you've used a few times, I mean, I think in your story, your father agreed that you should go and be educated, but are there many circumstances in which the children have to be removed from their families, regardless of whether the parents agree, in order that the children are being can be given their educational rights and their rights to play?
Well, lots of children, both of the children in India, they are trafficked, and they don't know, the parents don't know where their children are going. They are giving false promises, and they are also kidnapped, and then they are also trafficked to different places where they are put in work. And their parents, the parents, they never get a chance to contact them back. And while the people, they give money to their parents, the children's parents, and they make promises that your child will be going to live a good life. He will be earning money and also learning something. He will be getting education, which is and when the child come with him, and the place like the places like Delhi, Mumbai, or big cities where they are working in factories, they don't even get a chance to sleep. They are working for 16 to 18 hours, and that is not their parents are told. So the reality is different, that their parents doesn't know where their children are going and how they are going to live.
Mm-hmm. And are there unexpected countries? I mean, is this issue of child slavery, is it in countries where poverty is an enormous problem, or, well, it's a problem everywhere, but is it also happening in countries in the way that modern day slavery is happening all around us? Is child slavery also happening in unexpected places?
Yeah, absolutely. I have heard the news that children are working. The migrated children from different countries to even United States or other developing countries, they are working in agriculture and some other sectors where they don't get chance to go to school, and they have to work.
And if you think of children like yourself who've grown up into young adults, do you form an activist movement now, trying to bring the attention of governments and people like ourselves to the problem? Is that, I mean, obviously you're carrying on, I think you're going to be an engineer, or you are an engineer, but are you also an activist with many, many other ex or survivors in this area?
Well, yeah, the other children with me who have lived with me in Bal Ashram earlier, and also the children from the villages where our organization is working, we together, we are part of 100 Million Group, which is a global campaign. Already he told about that, is a mass movement for the youth to globalize and to globalize compassion for the other children, and to bring all the youth together, where we are going to speak for the other children who are still unheard and they are still trapped in the slavery. So we are doing that.
Kailash, can I ask you, we've got an audience here who I think, you know, there's no children in the audience. And so there's nobody who kind of going, well, that could be me. So it's an interesting kind of question about how you get adults to emotionally commit all around the world to supporting the rights of children. What can we here in Manchester best do to support the campaign that you and Kinsu are involved in?
Well, first of all, let me say something different.
Okay.
That everybody has a child inside her or him, irrespective of age.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are truthful, honest, if somebody is able to forgive others, if somebody has quest for learning, if somebody is simple and clear, if somebody is compassionate for others, then it means that there is a child inside us. So if we look the world with a child's eye, then the world is very beautiful. But if we are polluted, our eyes are polluted, our hearts and minds and souls are polluted, we call ourselves mature, learned, experienced, and so on. And we keep on losing that child inside us, and that is one of the biggest problems of our life as well as of the world. So better to keep that child, the purity, the simplicity inside us, and that is the childhood. Having said that, even if somebody is middle-aged or elderly person, can play very important role. First of all, everybody is using many products, as I said before, which are produced by child laborers. So as a conscious consumer, responsible consumer, we can ask this question to our shopkeeper or dealer or any other person, restaurant owner, whether your things are made by child laborers. So as a conscious consumer, if this question is asked before buying anything, then it will create tremendous pressure on not only that particular shopkeeper, but also on the entire supply chain and the manufacturers, big companies, brands, etc. So that is responsible consumerism. Secondly, the responsible citizenship. This question could be asked to our senator, congressman, parliamentarian, local leader, that how much you care for marginalized children in our country, in our world. So what about the laws and policies? What about the social protection programs for marginalized children who need them urgently? So as a concerned citizen or concerned voter, one can ask this question, especially during the elections, that we are living in an interconnected world. We are not able to solve any other problem. And that is the lesson everybody should learn from this pandemic, that if one is one child or one person is not safe, then others are not safe. So, as a citizen, we can ask this question. Uh, so these are two important roles we can play in that way. But of course, those who have some spare time, they can use the social media once they come to know that children are working as child slaves in one country or in one product. Then they can simply push a couple of buttons and send a strong message to that company owner. And if thousands and hundreds of thousands or millions of such text messages go to the chairperson or the boss or board of that company, that cannot be simply ignored. The people will know. The people sitting in the boardroom would be shocked, and perhaps they can change their business practices. So that is also possible using the social media. But everybody has one skill, one ability to speak out, so we can speak against this menace of exploitation of children in our own among our friends circles, in the schools, colleges, wherever we are. We can speak that every child has a right to be a child. Every child has a right to freedom as we enjoy. So this kind of talks will definitely help in action by the politicians and the people who make the decisions. So everybody has some power within, and that power should be used for the betterment of childhood.
Can we put the lights up on the audience? Thank you. And before you ask questions, I just wanted to say that, you know, we had a session on Friday called More Than a Roof, where we were talking about the care that we need to give everybody, but we focused a lot on children. You know, that children in care are often given only the barest essentials and not loving, playful, happy childhoods. And then I think of all the children who are looking after disabled parents or parents who have problems of any kind, and how little help they get compared to what we should be doing. So I think it's important for us to think that there is a systemic injustice that societies across the world give to children, which is that we don't care for them enough. They're very much the product of, if the family is solvent, happy, secure, not dysfunctional, then lucky child. But, you know, there's so many reasons why that can't be the case sometimes. And so although the child slavery is at the darkest end of what we're talking about, and of course don't forget that children can also be trafficked for sex slavery too, all societies have to rethink the rights of the child. So I just wanted to say that. So any questions or comments or thoughts you'd like to put to either Kailash or Kinsu? Yeah?
Hello. I think most people are aware that there's a lot of child labour in the industries of like agriculture, textiles and fashion, and also, as been mentioned, exploitation sexually. But are there any industries or particular companies that profit from child labour and child slavery that perhaps the general public wouldn't be so aware of?
Okay, so we're used to hearing about fashion and agriculture in particular, but are there other areas that we would be surprised to hear child labour exists in?
Well, we have rescued thousands, perhaps dozens of thousands of children from construction industry, like brick making, stone quarries. Mining is extremely hazardous industry where large number of children are working in gold mines. They are working in stone quarries and other places. So a lot of minerals which we might be using in our merchandise, they are produced by child laborers or child slaves in some parts of the world. Children are working as domestic help in many countries, and that is also modern day slavery, where the young girls preferably are preferred to work as domestic help. And that remains a kind of invisible slavery and inside the doors. So closed door slavery, and that is quite common in Asia, Africa, Latin America. Even sometimes these girls or boys are taken to Europe or America by some families, and then they live there. As Kinshu mentioned, the case of migrant workers. So in South, in of course agriculture sector, tobacco is an area which is very, very dangerous and hazardous in the United States, and children are engaged in making in working in tobacco fields, and there is no law. Actually, the law does not prohibit child labor and tobaccos in United States. And perhaps many people will be shocked to learn that United States is the only country that has not ratified the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, UNCRC. So it is not just what people say third world or poor countries issue. This is a global problem, and that has to be dealt by the entire humanity, as they are all our children. So children are working in many other occupations, as we know.
Other questions? Yes.
Hi, thank you. I guess linked to the last question a little bit is around the growth in numbers of children that you mentioned. Are there any particular parts of the world or industries where that's particularly apparent over the last 4 years? I guess linked to that as well then, are there any ways that, things like accreditations that we can look out for that guarantee that there isn't child labour in our supply chains, such as fair trade, for example? Is that one we could use? And are there any other ones that we should look out for?
I could not hear, sorry.
So the first question was to do with the rising numbers. You know, what are the industries where that's happening in, and what are the reasons for it happening, and what should we look out for, if you like, in terms of being able to spot where that's happening. But the other point was, is there something where we could be assured, like a fair trade badge or something, which says, don't worry, this has not got child labour attached? So are there accreditations that stop, that act on our behalf, really, to safeguard what we purchase?
Kinshu, do you want to? You can't hear?
Hello. I think my network got weak.
Okay, so I will
Yeah.
try. I will take your seat now. So we have seen this increase in child labor, particularly in some regions, and Sub-Saharan Africa has the largest number of child laborers. More than half child laborers in the world live in Sub-Saharan Africa. That is one. The second thing is that is much more serious and concerning, is that the number of child laborers has grown between an age group, and that is 5 to 11. And that is much more alarming, that this number has been increasing. So we have to address these issues. And one thing is clear, that we have not been able to ensure good quality public education, inclusive education, child-friendly education for our children between that age group, and particularly in case of girls. And in case of Sub-Saharan Africa, this is an utter failure of the governance, but also a failure of the rich countries, those who kept on making promises, but they have not delivered on them, especially in the development aid and the social protection programs. So these are some of the reasons. The second part is that there are some industries which started guaranteeing that these products are not made by child laborers. Rugs, the carpets is one of them. Some of the people might be knowing that there is a seal or a label called Good Weave is fixed on the carpets which are produced without child labor in South Asian countries, India, Pakistan, and Nepal. That labeling mechanism was introduced by me and my friends more than 20 years ago, when we realized that we are not able to eradicate child labor in this industry due to demand for cheap carpets in United States as well as in European countries, and a lot of corruption among the police and the local agencies was existing there. So we decided that let us approach consumers, and consumers should demand for a child labor-free rug. And I am happy and proud to say that since that label has been introduced in rug industry, the consumers were able to get a fair carpet, a clean carpet, free of child labor, and the demand for such carpets increased multifold. And since then, say between year 1995-96 till last year, the number of child laborers in South Asian carpet industry has dropped from 1 million to only 200,000. But 200,000 is a big number, but 800,000 children were saved. The number which was increasing before 95, that dropped considerably in this period because of the consumers' action as well as the positive action by some companies who decided not to engage child labor. So it was a combination of consumers' power as well as the good intention and good action by the corporate.
So you can see that consumer power can play an enormous role if we know where to look and where not to look. And are those carpets now, for example, those Indian carpets, are they labelled now, free of child labour? Is there something that says you can rely on this product having a clean supply chain?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not all the carpets, but carpets who have gone through proper monitoring and certification. So there's a robust mechanism, and those carpets have gone through it. They are guaranteed that they are free of child labor.
Right. And so there's a particular label. Any other questions? Lots. Great. I'll take 2 or 3 at the same time. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, because we've heard a lot about the power of consumers or potential power of consumers, about the role of the trade union movement across the world and in different countries, and the role of workers in relation to the issue and solidarity with children. And obviously you mentioned before that if it's a child doing the job, that's a role not being done by a member of another family, an adult member. So I just wanted to hear a bit more about that, if possible.
Okay, can I take 2 or 3 questions?
Yes, I wondered if there's some instances where the children may be so scared to leave their current situations in child labour, and if you've got any examples of how they've been encouraged. I'm sure it probably takes a lot of bravery from them as well if that's all they know and that's all they've experienced in their life.
Okay. One more question to begin with?
Thank you. Firstly, I'd just like to say thank you both for your incredible work that you're doing. I know Kinsu mentioned earlier that he obviously was working for his father. I have worked in a humanitarian setting in multiple countries over the world, one of which stands out to me where I've seen a lot of child labour, which was in Lesotho. That was mainly for the reason of the fact that nearly a quarter of their population has HIV, and sadly a lot of relatives have either passed away and the children are forced to work, not by choice, by families, but because of the health situation. Are you or what organisations are involved globally to kind of support the families that have resulted in the child labour? Because, I was seeing children as young as 2 or 3 working in the fields. But again, that wasn't by choice necessarily, but by necessity. So what support can be? It's great to take children away from the child labour and educate them, which is completely important, but is there anything that can actually support the families so that this doesn't perpetuate and continue?
Okay, Kinsu, can I come to you first? Children scared to leave the situation that they're in. How can it's not unlike finding yourself trying to survive domestic violence. How do children leave their families or alert authorities, or they must be terrified to be rescued in certain circumstances. So, Kinsu, how do you help young people hear that they can be rescued, that they are entitled to a different life, and that you can get them out and give them one?
Well, first thing is that the time they are rescued, they don't know what is happening, because they doesn't know that they should not work, and this is what is they are doing. This is exploitation. This is exploitation to them, and they should not be working. Instead of working, they should be going to school. So they are definitely doesn't know that where they should not be there. And when they are rescued, they are kept a safe place, a shelter where they feel safe, and they are counseled, and they take care of. And first, one of the most important thing is to connect them with their family. Either they call, or they talk to them, or they either we can bring their parents. They come to meet them. So this is how we make them that they are safe, and they are a right place. They should the place they are working was not good for that, and they should not be working. And this is how they realize and go through this all, and understand that what is right for them, and what is child labor is crime against them, and they should not be working. They should be going to school. And they were trafficked, or they were kidnapped, which was even their parents, they were not aware of that. And this is how they come to know, and they become aware and understand the situation.
Yeah, and I think we can all understand. Sorry, go on.
Just wanted to add more thing. And this process take sometime. It's depend with the different children. The process takes time. It varies from child to child, and sometimes it can be a couple of days, or sometimes it can go to the months, because the children, the situation they have come from, it is they are very traumatized, and they are badly abused. So it's really hard for them to trust anyone, because they have never faced a good condition.
So I think that if I can make a distinction between the children who have been kidnapped and trafficked and enforced, who obviously are both traumatized and separated from their parents, and you've talked a little about that. But what about children like yourself, who was working for your dad? I mean, there are two issues here. One is, do the children feel a sense of betrayal to their families if they are plucked away from their families and told that they should have education? And secondly, if their families, as you've said, have serious economic problems and HIV in the family, then can't work, how do the families get help for the destitution that might follow if they lose their child labour?
Well, there's come the point of government, which is there to take care of those children, and it's the responsibility of government there, the local body. If you talk about in India, there is the children have their right. The education is free for them, and there is a scheme where they can be linked, and either if they are single parent child, or their parents they committed crime, they are orphans. So there are scheme, and there are government policies with those children can be linked, and then they can their family also get the financial support, and the children also get the support from the government to get into education and go to enroll in school.
Okay, so there might be fragile support, but in theory there is support for the families in most cases.
Yes.
Other questions? Anybody? While I'm waiting to see another hand. I'd like to ask Kailash, it's kind of an irony, isn't it? Because you were given the Nobel Peace Prize in 2014 for leadership, for the global movement you've created around child slavery and exploitation of child labour. And the UN have just asked you as well to accelerate the SDG goals achievements. And yet, and we think of these prizes and these accolades as being, of the West, and the States being, the number one of the Westness. So why have they not signed this commitment to children's rights? Why is America so embarrassing and complicated and such a poor leader in this area?
Well, there are several issues, but one is the recruitment of young people in armed forces or army, because then recruitment is not possible up to the age of 18, for example. That is one of those reasons. But there are other reasons related to child marriages, the marriage of eligibility, the age of eligibility of marriage. So in many states in the United States, there is no strong law against child marriages. So there are some reasons like that. But there could be some other political reasons, definitely. And it's unfortunate that this has not happened.
It's very unfortunate. It's actually pretty terrifying. Can I just also pick up the question about the role of workers and trade unions? So there you have a group of children who shouldn't be working and shouldn't be taking the place of adults who should have those jobs. And then you have trade union movements and workers' rights movements all over the world. Are they mobilized to put their energy and commitment behind ending child slavery?
Yes, definitely. The International Coalition of Trade Unions, or the Platform of Trade Unions under the banner of ITUC, International Trade Unions Congress, Confederation, they are the key partners in our fight against child labor since the beginning. If not the beginning, definitely since mid-90s. They are close partners in our 100 million campaign. They are working with us in the Fair Share for Children to End Child Labor campaign. They were the part of the Global March Against Child Labor, which demanded an international law to end child labor in hazardous forms, or what we call the worst forms of child labor. And we succeeded because of the trade unions' involvement. Right. And also at local level, in most countries, trade unions have been very, very active, like the teachers' unions in the United States and most of the European countries, and teachers' unions worldwide under the umbrella of Education International have been an integral partner and very active partners from the beginning. So I owe a lot of respect for them and for their leadership.
So I've got one more question for you, Kailash, and then one, Kinsu, for you. And my question, Kailash, is really about other countries in the world, the Middle East, China, countries that we have problems sometimes understanding what's going on between the surface narratives and then what's underneath. I mean, that's true of all countries. But is child labour and slavery an issue in China? And is it an issue in the Middle East?
Yes, definitely. Once in a while, this is exposed when some independent groups come to know that children are engaged in supply chain of an international brand who is active in China. So also once in a while, it was exposed that children or adults were working as slaves in brick making factories and fishing industry and other places. But you're right that we don't know much about it. World does not have enough knowledge about China, but I'm pretty sure that children must be working in China in especially in rural China.
Yeah.
I have visited China a couple of times, and I tried to figure out, but I have seen that in the rural China, the people living in poverty, not so acute poverty, but definitely they are poor, and children must be working in some handicrafts and some other kind of industries. So that is there. In case of the Middle East, we have knowledge about it. It is not so difficult as it was, say, 20, 30 years ago. So we know that children are working in Middle Eastern countries.
So it's a huge job still to do that, and I think that we are, we're grateful that you're doing it, and I guess as well we're probably reminded that we need to galvanize more of the adult power that we have to speak on behalf of the voiceless, and children are very voiceless in these situations. But I wanted to come back to you, Kinsu, because I can imagine you as a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old, diligent. I've got 2 grandchildren, and so I can imagine them being very diligent in their doing of the bricks or the picking of the crops or the, organising of the plastics, because children want to be helpful and they work very hard. And, that's what's so cruel, really. They're very easy to exploit. And, of course, they love their family, and I'm sure you did. When you were given the right to play, never mind the right to read, just the right to play, what happened to your sense of who you were?
Well, it's a big feeling, and I never thought when I was working, I never thought that there will be a big change in my life when I come to this place at Bal Ashram in Rajasthan, and when I see the more other children, they were more 100 of the children were staying here, and they were living. They were happy. They were eating together. They were playing together, and soon as I came, they make me part of it, and I just forgot everything that what my past was, and I just got into everything here, and that's how the change came in my life, and soon I was able to read, write, and speak well, and everything just it was. I started to dream that I can become something. I want to be something, and I can do whatever I want in my life.
What was your first toy?
Well, I was playing cricket, so we play cricket in India a lot, and so we play cricket, and I was a big fan of Indian cricket, so we love to watch cricket and also play cricket. I still do it.
You still do? Okay, yes, and you're still quite irritating in the test matches, I have to say, as a result.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kailash, and thank you, Kinsu, for joining us, making the time to do that. We're very encouraged to know that you're doing what you're doing, and we will try to add this into the many things on our list of things that we need to be aware of, tell other people about, and do what we can to help. So thank you very much indeed from all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.